There is a darkness that lives in the space between who we believe ourselves to be and what we are capable of becoming. It does not announce itself with fanfare or dramatic transformation. It slips in quietly, disguised as duty, as necessity, as the simple following of orders. One day, a man wakes to find himself a stranger in his own skin, his moral compass warped by forces he never saw coming. The descent into monstrosity is never as abrupt as we imagine. It is a slow unraveling, a series of small compromises that accumulate like stones in the pocket, dragging a person deeper into waters they once swore they would never enter. The question is not whether good people can become monsters, but how easily it happens. History has shown us time and again that ordinary men and women, under the right circumstances, are capable of extraordinary cruelty. The line between hero and villain is not as fixed as we would like to believe. It is permeable, shifting, easily crossed. Obedience is a virtue until it becomes a weapon. There is something deeply unsettling about the human tendency to relinquish moral responsibility in the face of authority. A man in a uniform barks an order, and suddenly, the unthinkable becomes permissible. The hesitation, the doubt, the inner voice that whispers this is wrong. They are drowned out by the louder, more insistent voice that says this is expected of me. The terrifying truth is that most atrocities are not committed by sadists or sociopaths, but by ordinary people who believe they are simply doing their job. The banality of evil is not that it is trivial, but that it is bureaucratic, mundane, even boring. It does not require malice, only thoughtlessness, a signature on a piece of paper, a shrug of the shoulders, a refusal to question. The mind has a remarkable capacity to justify almost anything. Small acts of cruelty pave the way for larger ones. First, we dehumanize, labeling others as less than, as threats, as abstractions rather than people. Then we rationalize, telling ourselves it is necessary, that the ends justify the means, that someone else would do worse in our place. Finally, we detach, separating ourselves from the consequences of our actions, compartmentalizing until the guilt becomes manageable. This is how good people sleep at night after doing terrible things, not because they are evil, but because they have convinced themselves they had no choice. The most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. There is safety in numbers, but there is also danger. A crowd does not think, it reacts. It does not question, it obeys. The pressure to conform is a force more powerful than most realize. To stand apart is to risk rejection, ridicule, even violence. And so, people fall in line. They laugh at jokes they find cruel. They repeat slogans they don't believe. They turn away when someone is suffering because everyone else is turning away too. The group grants permission. It absolves guilt. It whispers that if everyone is doing it, it cannot be wrong. But morality is not a democracy. Just because 1,000 people agree on something does not make it just. Every person carries a darkness inside them. It is not some foreign entity, not some demon waiting to possess. It is simply the part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. The capacity for rage, for pettiness, for violence. We like to believe we are better than this, that we are immune to corruption. But the truth is far more unsettling. Under the right conditions, anyone can break. The difference between those who succumb and those who resist is not innate goodness, but vigilance. The willingness to look inward, to question one's own motives, to recognize the first signs of moral compromise. Self-awareness is the antidote to self-deception. Evil thrives not just through the actions of the wicked, but through the inaction of the good. The bystander effect is a poison. The assumption that someone else will step in, that the responsibility is not ours alone. But morality is not a spectator sport. The moment we decide that suffering is not our problem, we have already begun our descent. Heroism is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear dictate inaction. It is the understanding that silence is complicity, that neutrality always favors the oppressor. The final step in becoming a monster is believing you are nothing like your victims, that they deserve their fate, that they are different, lesser, other. Dehumanization is the grease that keeps the wheels of cruelty turning. Once you strip a person of their humanity in your mind, there is no limit to what you can justify doing to them. But the line between us and them is an illusion. The moment we forget that another's suffering is as real as our own, we have already lost ourselves. Is redemption possible? Can a person who has crossed that line ever return? The answer is yes, but it is not easy. It requires staring into the abyss of one's own actions without flinching. It demands accountability, remorse, the painful work of making amends where possible. But the first step is the simplest and the hardest. The refusal to make excuses. The willingness to say, I did this. It was wrong. I will not do it again. In the end, the difference between those who become monsters and those who do not is not circumstance, but choice. The choice to question, the choice to resist, the choice to remain human when the world asked you to surrender your humanity. The darkness is always there, waiting, but so is the light.